hello, everyone. Thank you for coming here for Penny for a Tale on this Friday night. I know some of you might be in the theater now watching John Wick, but because you're so excited about this interview, you also have this out and listening to it. Because they're just about even in terms of awesomeness. But yeah, today we have a special guest, and I'm going to try really hard to pronounce her last name. She has coached me on this, but as you guys know, I am horrible with names. But all right, let me introduce Elizabeth Chaipraditkul.
That sounds good.
Yes. I should get points. She is a game designer for Angry Hamster Publishing. Currently running a Kickstarter, Afterlife Wandering Souls, which, if you have been keeping up to date, you will see we are playing it the 21st at 8 p.m. I've read through it. All my people have read through it. I'm super excited. The art is amazing. The setting is awesome. But today we are going to focus on Elizabeth and her story and just all that is Elizabeth. This is the Elizabeth Show, as presented by Penny for a Tale.
Sweet.
All right, so let's hop right into it. So you've mentioned that some of the ideas for Afterlife, the Quick Start adventure, came from your time in university. What elements in your life at that time kind of inspired you? What were you reading? What were you watching? Or just what were you looking at that kind of started the foundation of what will be or is Afterlife?
Well, I think probably at least in university time, too much anime. And if you look at the art in Afterlife, you won't immediately think anime, right? Like
Yeah, I
it's
don't. I was like,
it's like art-wise, there's not a large link, but I think thematically, some of the more fantastical elements that are included in anime, even when you kind of have very mundane themes, right? Like
mhm.
schoolgirls or something like that. They still kind of have these fantastical elements,
Yeah.
and that kind of starts seeping into your game design, right? Until you look at the world with a sheen of magical realism over it. And I think Afterlife then takes that and quadruples it, you know?
Takes it to the next level. What
Yeah.
animes were you watching?
Well, my first, I started out with a very very easy step in, which was Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh,
And
yes.
my friends got me into Full Metal Alchemist. Like, you need to watch this. This is your jam. I'm like, okay. Watched Full Metal Alchemist, and then I started watching Cowboy Bebop and stuff like that, and just kind of diving deeper into random anime which my friends were throwing at me, and then eventually I was looking for myself, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely have watched those two. Full Metal Alchemist makes me cry.
I still can't keep it together, and when Brotherhood came out too,
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I should rewatch this again, and then I was like, do I want to hurt myself? You know what I mean? Do I want to go through this pain? Also, because people are saying it's like the ultimate edition, right? Like that
Yeah, it
collector's
is.
plot.
It is. I feel like it's kind of like watching Graveyard of the Fireflies. You watch it one time, and then after that, you gotta wait a while. You gotta emotionally prepare yourself for the sadness that is to come.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just, and also there's just a couple episodes with Full Metal Alchemist, like when you get to the father and his daughter,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
It's too much. Too
Yeah,
too
yeah, it's
still
too
too
much.
soon.
Then again, I guess I know when it's coming too, so I can be an adult. Like, I get to choose what episodes I fast forward through, you know? Like,
Yeah, a guest said Edward.
oh, oh.
too too soon. It's still too soon. It still tears me up. Yeah, I believe I was watching Fruit Baskets, was kind of one of the first animes that I was looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I also I discount me watching Sailor Moon as a kid because that was before my almost addictive nature of I must watch all of this
Hmm.
anime for the entire weekend and not see a ray of sunlight. You know what I mean? Like whereas like when I was a kid, like Sailor Moon would come on TV and you'd just be like, oh, awesome, you know?
Oh yeah, every morning before school, that was me. Loved it so
We
much.
I grew up in Thailand, and like we had cable, right? So we
Mhm.
had like English cable because like my household primarily spoke English. So I would have to like randomly catch it, and then like my mom would like record the episodes for me like on VCR
Aw.
so I could watch them again. And like I was just a kid, so like I didn't get that I was watching the same thing over and over again. I
Yeah.
remember being like incredibly dismayed that there were like way more episodes of Sailor Moon than I thought there were. You know, like
There are so many. So
yeah,
many.
they do different things. Amazing. You
Yeah,
know,
it's a really good show, and I think they're gonna reboot it. I don't know.
are they? Oh man. Oh, that'll be good though. I'll watch
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, definitely. I would. Anything Sailor Moon's always awesome. Especially, I was a huge fan of Tuxedo Mask.
He was suave, man.
He's so cool. If only the people at school realized how cool he was when I kind of like started adopting his style. But now,
You just like show up full cape,
yeah,
rose your top.
just in the corner of the room with the wind flapping with my little cape. It was perfect. All right, so on to the next one. So everyone's process to creating a game is pretty different. We've had a couple of people here that have kind of explained their process, and it's been interesting watching different people's perspective on how they create a game. So what is your process like?
Um, so my process has changed a lot since when I started because basically game design and like writing for the role play industry kind of started as a hobby. Like I started actually writing for the Living Forgotten Realms, and that was just kind of like I like D&D, I'll write some adventures, you know. And then I had this idea for my own game, which was Witch, and that was like a labor of love, which took me like 7 years to write. And then I just kind of threw it on Kickstarter, and I'm like, maybe my friends and family will give me enough money that this game can be in the world, right?
Hmm.
So like that was just I'm going to just write whatever purple prose I want until it turns into something
Yeah.
somewhat playable. And then I actually got into the industry through that piece, and my process kind of vastly changed. So for me, how it starts is I have a kind of like thematic setting that I really enjoy. So
Hmm.
like with Afterlife, right? Like the idea that you're dead and you have to travel these surreal worlds
Yeah.
in order to find your memories. That's kind of like the genesis of Afterlife. And from there, I start thinking about like what actual dice system will fit.
Hmm.
And originally, Afterlife was meant to kind of be a spiritual predecessor to Witch. So I was trying to use the same dice system as Witch.
Hmm.
And I actually ended up taking a break with my work on Afterlife because death is a bit of a heavy subject.
Yeah, yeah. It can. It definitely
and
is.
I had just written Witch, which was like selling your soul to the devil, and I was doing a few other like darker, at least darker themed freelance work things. So I was like, I need to stop working on this game. Um,
So a little soul detox.
yeah, yeah. I just need. So I wrote Familiars of Terra. That was awesome. That's all about like animal companions and being an adventurer.
I know it
And then
looks
I was
so
like,
cute.
yeah. And then I was like ready to go back to actually working on Afterlife. And by that time, I had grown so much as a designer. I realized I'm like, this dice system doesn't fit what I'm actually trying to accomplish. And I had another dice system that I was working on, which fit Afterlife perfectly, and that I was really enthusiastic about, and that I actually want to carry on to other games that I'm
Hmm.
creating. So that's and like kind of what I ended up designing for Afterlife.
Yeah.
So concept and then mechanics to fit what you're trying to portray with the concept.
Excellent. And so I saw in a blog you often use kind of like Pinterest and Spotify to help out with it. What would you kind of categorize the your Pinterest board for Afterlife as well as your Spotify? What were you looking for when you were making them?
I think hmm, for Pinterest, I was looking for very evocative pieces. Um, there is a Japanese artist. His surname is Yamamoto. I'm so sorry, I don't remember his first name. But he has this one piece of this woman kind of. It's almost. It really reminds me of Gustav Klimt almost.
Mhm.
Like, and she's kind of like um, whooshing across the screen. But it just gives you a sense and a feeling, right?
Mhm.
So everything that I pinned for Afterlife was kind of a surreal piece that tried to evoke an emotion in some way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I started to inspire myself to continue writing, because sometimes you just need to look at beautiful things.
Mhm.
So it kind of surreal. And also the color palette, like if you look at some of the pieces that we have on our Kickstarter for Afterlife, that is very much the color palette that I've pinned as well. So like dreamy,
Yeah.
like almost, yeah, like it takes you into that dreamy memory state, right?
Yeah.
Um, my Afterlife playlist is a little less a little less like coordinated, right? Because like, you know how music, I don't know, like if you're the same with me with music, it's like, all right, I've created this beautiful playlist and I'm totally willing to show people, but now I'm gonna add this country song in, which makes no sense. You know what I mean? Just because like you need that when you're writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So my Afterlife playlist like started off kind of really cool, gothy, witch pop type things, and then slowly got like, I don't want to say trashier, but like I added some pop songs in there. Like I'm
Yeah.
not willing to show anybody later on.
Yeah,
You
no,
know what I
I listened to it today, and as I was kind of like preparing for this, and I was like, all right, I get it. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, we went through Johnny Cash, and then later on, there's definitely some more like pop songs, and just kind of like,
It's like if you see the order in which I added the songs, you can see the moment I gave up on trying to make my playlist cool. Um,
you're like, I
and I
just want to listen to this now.
and I think that's probably the moment I didn't think anyone else was going to read that blog post. So I was like, "No."
I will have you know, I read every single one of them.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, so for people watching, if you are interested in checking out her Pinterest and Spotify, I have those in the links. If you are watching from YouTube later on, they will be right there on the details. I encourage you to check them out. They're amazing. Whether you're kind of just wanting to look at something cool while you're surfing the internet, or want to listen to something kind of in that groove of Afterlife.
But only listen to the first 15 songs and then forget about everything else.
You'll see the change when it happens. And you peek your head out and look around. So we have a person, delinquents, has asked on the subject of music and inspiration. Was there one song that stood out more than the rest that sparked your creativity on this game?
um, I have to be honest and say no. I'm so sorry. Like I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I don't think so. I just think the general, I think, feeling of loss, like you mentioned Johnny Cash, right? Like I
Hmm.
think I have Hurt on the playlist
Yeah,
when he
Hurt
does like
and
a Nine Inch Nails cover,
yeah,
and it's brilliant.
so good.
It's so good. Like I dare say, and I hope we don't have any Nine Inch Nails fans, but like it's better than the original. Don't kill me.
They're coming
Um,
after us.
yeah. But like that evoke a certain emotion, right? Like that loss and that loss of memory. So to kind of put you in the mind of the wanderer, that was kind of my goal when creating that playlist, so that I could empathize with these people in some way.
Yeah.
But there's not one song that really like I played over and over and over again, besides for like maybe Britney Spears' Toxic, and that is just like so far from the theme of Afterlife. But just like sometimes you need to listen to Toxic on repeat, you know?
I do like that song.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it also, like, because it's a song I know so well, like, it just gets you into this, like, I'm just writing something and I'm not even hearing what I'm listening to.
Yeah, Determined Nerd says Nine Inch Nails fan, but definitely got Johnny Cash cover is infinitely better.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Terminator said even I even think Nine Inch Nails admitted Johnny Cash's cover was better as well. So
Really? I
someone
mean, it's
someone backed
solid.
that up, but it makes
Yeah, no,
sense.
that it's solid, man. Like, and I like Nine Inch Nails too, but just like when I heard that, I'm like, oh man, like he did something to that song.
It is, yeah. And I remember listening to that when Logan came out. And I couldn't help but draw parallels between like the afterlife and Logan's kind of in journey in relation to the song. Just this, this very gruff, tired wanderer trying to find something of worth in this kind of land of desolation and greed and and that gritty like vocals of Johnny Cash.
Yeah, yeah, he's yeah, but Johnny Cash. All right, but yeah, he does something to me.
Me too. So in 2014, you started Angry Hamster Publishing. First off, I have a quick question. The name.
Yeah, have you played Baldur's Gate?
I have not. My
There's
wife just went through, got done playing it.
there's a miniature giant space hamster, and his name's Boo. Um, and he's awesome. He doesn't play like a huge part in the game, but he goes for the eyes and he's angry, or like he's with a barbarian. It's a whole thing. But like I love Boo. So when I was trying to think of a name for my company, at first I thought of like all these kind of cool names.
Yeah.
And my partner at the time, he's like, Angry Hamster Publishing. I was like, huh, very funny. My game company's gonna be named something super classy. And then just the moment he said that, I was like, all right,
Yeah,
never
that's
mind.
it. That's it.
That's it. Like it fits. It's memorable. I don't know if it's like it was the smartest business decision to
I
name the
like it. Yeah, I think it definitely it's something I remember. I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting name."
yeah, exactly. At least people remember the name, right? Like
This image of this angry hamster lives on.
yeah.
So, once again, 2014 started the publishing company, an endeavor that has led to 3 successful Kickstarters. I know you did one Monsters, but was that under the Angry Hamster Publishing?
It was. So basically, Kickstarter did this Make 100 thing. It
Mm-hmm.
was this cool initiative where they just asked creators to make like 100 of something.
Ooh.
So I was like, that sounds like fun. That's something I want to do in my January.
Yeah.
So I got together with a really talented illustrator. Her name's Jennifer Bone, and she ended up illustrating a story I had written when I was 7 years old, and I
Aw.
turned that story into a dungeon crawl. So yeah, so then we turned it into this mini Kickstarter. We like kind of finished it, and it was really cool. Like I was happy to have published that,
Yeah.
and
It looked like a lot of fun. The art and just kind of the nice little. I think it is something I would probably show my kid.
I
Definitely.
mean, it is straight from the mind of a 7 year old. So like, I guess I mean, there's people losing their bikinis and like towels falling, and I was a very strange 7 year old and monster, a huge monster.
And then so there was Monster, there was Witch Faded Souls, which was your first one. Oh man, and then Tales, the second one, Tales of
Familiars of Terra.
yeah, Familiars of Terra. Um, so all this awesome things that have been happening in the last like couple years and such. Can you describe kind of what was that leap of faith like when you first wrote was like, I'm gonna put this on Kickstarter and whatever happens happens.
I mean, it was. I honestly, so like, I had done a lot of promotion for Witch because I'm someone who can't like let things go. I was like, I'm just gonna try my best to promote this game to all these cool people who have no idea who I am. Like I remember I had printed out like copies of Witch and I had like bound them together in like those plastic sheets that you put reports in.
Yes.
I sent it out to a bunch of people and I sent it out to One Shot podcast too. Huge fan of One Shot, and I was like, there's no way they're gonna read it. and they ended up reading it and putting it out there. So that was like amazing. But I still didn't think that Witch would be a success.
Hmm.
In terms of like, I very much thought that my family and friends were going to take pity on me, and then like at the end of the 30 days, I would just scrape by enough money to like make the game and have this cool memory. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
have this kind of period in my life where I made this book. But it turned out I think we were funded in under 2 days. And we made over $15,000. So it was amazing. Like
Yeah.
it was beyond anything that I had expected, and really had it kind of launched me into the industry and gave me the ability to start freelancing and my own company. So
Yeah.
it was amazing. Like I was so overwhelmed by people's generosity, and like that sounds very strange, like silly to say, because I guess a lot of people say that. But I didn't have time to think about how scary it was, because I was just so overwhelmed about how nice people were and how much they liked
Yeah.
the content.
No, it's completely understandable. I mean, for me in this whole endeavor, like it's been a labor of love from everyone else, and it's always amazing to see how many people will come out and support you, even though you kind of have those thoughts like, oh no, this is gonna be bad.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you feel more human in a way, because I
Mhm.
think when you put yourself out there, and I guess it's the same with the Twitch stream, like until people start interacting back with you, it kind of feels like you're on this island,
Yeah,
right? And then
yep.
like the moment people come out for you and actually start interacting with you and saying like, "Hey, this is cool," or like, "Let me ask you a question," like it really means so much, you know?
Yeah, and you're really just kind of you're building this community, which is always like kind of the shooting star where kind of we all try to shoot for in these endeavors. And I remember on your kind of one of your latest posts, sometime this earlier this year, about kind of the things that you wanted for Angry Hamster Publishing in terms of kind of building a stronger community and stuff like that. Um, so I know at that time you still didn't have the exact like what you wanted to do, but did you have kind of any ideas now about what exactly that will mean now that you're going full time into kind of the Angry Hamster publishing?
I mean, so I have an idea of what it's going to look like in the future. I'm not going to share that yet though, because it's something that I'm working on still, and I don't want to pitch it until it's like completely
Of
done.
course, of course.
But in general, like at least in these past few months, I've tried to be more cognizant with interacting with people,
Hmm.
and kind of genuine interactions on social media, right? Because that's something that I had started doing when I was promoting Witch, and that's mostly because had just kind of gotten into the international roleplay community.
Hmm.
So for me, it was just cool and interesting to like hear about people, and then somewhere along the way, I lost that,
Hmm.
and social media became more of a chore, right? Like it just became this slog of like, oh God, I have to put a blog post out. I should like this, you know what I mean? Like I stopped
Yeah,
becoming
yeah,
and like I stopped geeking out with the people who kind of make up the community. So I've tried in earnest these past few months to be a little more present on there, right? And like try to communicate and be there with people,
yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Oh, definitely. There's a very fine line with something that's like, something you enjoy and love to do, and then kind of becomes a chore sometimes, and it just kind of wiggles and wobbles based on, at least for me, kind of like how my day is going and what's happening. But yeah, I mean, that's something I'm really excited for because, Afterlife is such an amazing game, and I checked out your other games, which seems like the most enticing for me. But Terra looks really interesting. It looks amazing, and I remember in a post you talked about like how it's okay to be the serious good guy, and how it's kind of so refreshing. Um, and that I think I commented on that. It might have been that or another one. But I mean, can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of what you were thinking about when you wrote that post, and I guess why it's so refreshing to sometimes play the good guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think so. Like, I think we've talked very briefly about the games you like, and I see some of your games in the background.
Yeah.
So, but
Some.
like, I play a lot of dark games, right? Like, or like at least like like I am suffering in my own drama of my drama.
Yep,
And
yep.
like everyone else is suffering in the drama of the darkness and blah 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 blah. And like everyone's a shade of gray, and like let's spend 3 hours debating whether or not what we're doing is right.
Mm-hmm.
When all secretly we know if we were faced with this in real life, we would think we were the most evil jerks in the
Yep.
world.
Yep.
Um, so I think like when I was creating Familiars of Terra, I wanted to give the people the ability to be a hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a hero without um where you had to make moral choices, but they were human moral choices,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like, should we share this information with the police or should we keep this information to ourselves? So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, like what's going to do the greatest good? Um, because I think sometimes in a role play game that can be refreshing because I think the mundane dramas we face are enough, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And when you're in a fantastical world and you have a magical animal, because that's Familiars of Terra, you have a magical companion that's basically a Pegasus that can like fly you around and you're doing epic deeds and you have titles, right? Like you're the savior of Emerald and all these other things. Like sometimes it's okay for you to be that hero, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's okay for you to struggle with like the Superman struggle, which is just like, oh no, I'm so awesome, but like I must do the right thing. You know what I mean? Like, and that's so much fun in a game to like give yourself that permission to be good, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
to like give yourself the permission to say, you know what, like me just struggling with like wanting to get home to my kids on time because I'm a hero, like that's a struggle. Like that's an actual thing, you
Yep.
know? Like,
Yeah, it was refreshing, because I got done playing Colts and Changeling the Lost and like Delta Green and all this, just kind of going through the mud, and it's nice to just kind of shake it off and be like, all right, I'm a good guy.
I think also like and to celebrate each other like when you do something awesome, right? And to
Yeah.
have people celebrate you too, because like for example, like my friends and I we played like the longest campaign of Vampire the Masquerade. Like it lasted 10 years and like
Whew.
three apocalypses. Like like and I think like no one ever celebrated my players. I was the GM, so I could have celebrated them, but I
Mhm.
didn't. Like no one ever celebrated them when they averted the Gehenna for like the 15th time. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like no one ever celebrated them when they spared that mortal in the alleyway, you know? So it just sometimes it feels really good to just be like, whoop whoop, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. I mean, I think that's as a GM, that's a good point to just kind of be like, you did this thing, it'd be nice. I'm sure the players will really appreciate it, for the world to respond in a positive way for something cool and nice that they did. Because
yeah.
normally you're just like backstabbing people, and you're like, that my friend of mine is probably a Tremere covert
Oh.
ops. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Like I just think like and because in real life too, right? Like when you see heroes, you're the first person to be like, oh my god, you did a good thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. It's awesome to have. Uh, Uma Chica says, always important to celebrate characters, makes the RP more fun. So yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and like celebrate them without any ulterior motive because like to say I never celebrated my character, like my vampire characters is maybe like unfair,
Hmm.
but I definitely celebrated them so like later on I could crush them harder. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
You gotta build them up and.
Yeah, I mean, like, because, like, you know, if it's just constantly dark, it's not good. You need the ups and downs. So if like you have really high, then you're gonna have a real low as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, I my players can understand that. So I have a personal question, very important. What's your favorite masquerade clan?
Tamichi, always, always.
Ooh, okay. All right.
What? What's your favorite clan?
I'm a Tremere.
Oh,
Always.
oh.
Yeah.
In my first game, I outlawed anyone playing Tremere. I said you can play any clan, but the clan you can't play is Tremere. Okay, we'll debate this later. I think this might be a separate show.
Yeah, another show. Why you should ban Tremere characters.
We can set it up like one of those school debates. Like we each get 5 minutes to say our
Have the people vote.
yeah, exactly.
I'll have all my Tremere brethren come out from the woodwork for this. This will be great.
Okay.
With all
So
of
we're
our
rallying
yeah,
people.
yeah, all of our blood match. It's just gonna turn into like some PvP like masquerade match with like the Zamisi versus the Tremere, and the whole city burns. Uh, but yeah, check that out next time for Penny for a Tale, talk show turned street fight.
It's like then Team Slewberry is gonna come out of nowhere, like,
Yeah.
we
Oh my
love
gosh.
her.
Salubri. Those are the real bad guys.
Oh, I'm leaving. Thank you for the interview.
It was awesome. I appreciate it. Oh, all right. Let's get back on task, on focus. um, what's your favorite project that you've worked on and why? Because I know you've done a lot of freelancing, and of course you can always say your own projects. But kind of want to hear your thoughts.
Yes, I'll name a freelance project simply because I think like working on your own stuff is so much more fulfilling than working on other, like, so you can't compare them, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
or at least like, I mean, I think if I was free full-time freelancing, then of course I'd be able to, but like I really love doing my own projects,
Mm-hmm.
so like my ego will just let me go on and on about that. But I have two projects which came to mind, which are kind of like separate.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is that I really, really loved being the lead developer for the Crescent Empire book for
Mm-hmm.
John Wick Presents Seventh Sea Second Edition. That's a mouthful. It was the second book that I developed for them, and I am a big fan of Middle Eastern folklore
Yeah.
and culture and everything kind of surrounding that culture, the different cultures there. So the book meant a lot to me. And I was so excited that they invited me back to do a second book with them. And so that was just a very, and also like, working for a big company
Yeah.
and, taking, at least at that level, taking a book from A to Z was just like such a learning experience for me, and then also so rewarding because I loved the subject material so much.
It's so good.
uh,
Seven Seas is one of my favorite games.
I am a big fan. And then I wrote the book of lore
Mm-hmm.
for Magpie Games and their game Bluebeard's Bride.
Ooh.
um, and I love that because, first of all, one of my very, very good friends is one of the creators of Bluebeard's Bride, and it's a beautiful game, right? Like, even
Yeah,
if she
it's
wasn't my friend,
gorgeous.
the game that these three women created, Marissa Kelly, Whitney Strix Beltrain, and Sarah Richardson,
Mm-hmm.
is amazing. And they asked me to write a storybook for it. So, like, write the tale of Bluebeard with all these different endings to it. And that was just a great honor. And also, it was cool because I'd never written a storybook before. So
Mm-hmm.
that was just like, it was so different than RPG work. And it was great to like kind of develop that with them and write it. And yeah, very cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's interesting because I just got done talking to Mark from Magpie Games, who's kind of made the cartel stuff. I just got done talking to him today. But yeah, Magpie Games, such great stuff, and the art for Bluebeard. Whew.
Yeah, I mean, Marissa's a very, very talented art director, and she was my art director for Crescent Empire, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I've worked with her for a while, and she's just, I mean, her eye for how she wants a book to go, and then how she gets it there is just extremely talented.
Yeah. Well, if you ever see her, let her know that she had me in terms of that book, like just from the cover. I saw that and I didn't need anything else but the cover. It was just,
It's like, you had me at the cover.
yeah, it's gorgeous. All right. So, you kind of mentioned in blogs and stuff like that. You talked about some of the struggles you've experienced in breaking into the industry. Um, it's hard for everyone. I spoke to a good amount of kind of indie people who definitely face the same thing. But what would you say were some of the kind of the biggest personal challenges for you in terms of breaking in?
I think for me, once I actually started getting opportunities in the industry, it was very hard for me to say no. Um, right. So like I said yes to every single project, not a bad thing for me career wise. Like
Hmm.
for breaking in wise, it made me well known amongst publishers quickly.
Hmm.
But I think I suffered a bit because I don't think that I took all the lessons from all the assignments that I could have if I had done less,
Hmm.
right? Because I think after every project, there's a time where you need to reflect. Even if it's a small, like 1,000 word, I'm gonna write this one thing for this one company. Like you need a moment to actually think about what you've done in the process that
Yeah.
you and like I actually when I started I had this policy of like doing like asking for feedback for example, and then like and if the feed like like did you like working with me, is there something about my writing, can I do better,
Hmm.
and then like halfway through I think the first year or something it got so overwhelming that I was just like knocking out work, to the point where like I even went back like 2 years later for like a publisher that I work with like very regularly and I'm like, do you have any feedback for me? Like, I'm assuming my work's okay enough that you keep hiring me, but like,
Yeah.
and I think that was kind of to my detriment, just like development wise as a writer. Um, and in terms of breaking in, I think uh, one thing that everyone experiences is that you're not going to get paid what you want to get paid. Um, you're in a lot of big companies, and I like don't mean to be like, ooh, indie companies are the best to work for because I'm an indie company. Um, but big companies don't pay you what you're worth.
Hmm.
Um, and they don't pay you for the amount of work you're going to be doing. Because if you're writing for a very well known line, for example, they're going to expect you to have that lexiconic knowledge of a fan, basically. And they're going to expect that you're a fan, and you want to just write something for them. And it's kind of like your honor in which to do so. And it is an honor, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're writing for a game you love, but then they'll do something like offer you 2 cents a word, and you'll think, well, I'm an unknown nobody, and I really want to write for this. Um, and that was a big struggle for me, right? Like I ended
Yeah.
up saying yes to these things, and once you get in at that level, and you don't even try asking more, right? Like it's very hard to step up,
Yeah.
um, and it's very hard to break through that thing of like, well, you accepted 3 cents, and this is only the third thing you're writing for us, so you know what I mean? Like that's very difficult, and I definitely learned some lessons there.
Yeah, I mean that sounds difficult. I mean, definitely you want to get your name out there, right? The exposure, kind of dilemma where you need it, but you obviously big companies, any company definitely needs to pay what's appropriate for the people. It's
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
honor, but you
Yeah, I mean, I also think like so that's not also on, and that's not to say to anybody listening that like that's just on you, right, to ask like what you're worth. But that's very much on the companies too. Like I now when writing or asked to write for larger companies
know.
and I see what they offer, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I pay double what you pay as a starting rate because like you can't pay people like this. Like and they don't have to have lexiconic knowledge of my game because my game is only 15 pages at this point. You know, like it just it's so I really, and I think a lot of indie publishers have echoed me if you've asked them the
Yeah.
same question, that like I really hope that at one point all our small companies that are paying people appropriately start just like putting so much shame on these larger companies that they do something about their policies, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like they don't have the money, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah, I mean, like you kind of hope. At least this is my hope. Especially with Kickstarter, and now that tabletop is getting a little bit more mainstream. More people are checking it out. So there's more kind of support for different types of games. You hope that like these great, inspirational, creative, super cool like indie game designers, that they in about 10 years become like the industry giants, but also take kind of what they learned in that small space, and continue to show love and support for all creative types in the industry. Um, so that's my hope, that you all
Yeah.
get like super famous.
Yeah,
super
well, I mean,
successful.
I hope so too. Like, and like, the ones with good policies too. Because I also just think, like, even if someone is doing this as a hobby, right,
Hmm.
and they're willing to write 2,000 words for you, and they know everything to know about blood magic and the Tremere, even though the Tremere is like trash clan,
Oh my
like,
gosh.
like, but like, you'd hope that, like, still that fan would be respected enough to be paid for the time that they're investing in writing something awesome for you.
Yeah,
And that's,
definitely.
I'm just using this as a random example, not as any actual company who's done this,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you know what
yeah,
I mean?
definitely.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The chat is very much on your side in terms.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have I know South 2012 writes, and it sounds like a couple of them do so as well. So yeah, definitely. So what's the biggest piece of advice, since we have some people on the chat writing and freelancing and such like that? What would be your biggest advice for someone trying to break into the RPG industry?
Don't be afraid to ask for work. Don't be afraid to email, stalk as many people as possible. Send them your writing work. Tell them how much you respect their work and what they do, and ask if they have anything for you. Because a lot of the jobs I got when I started off is that I connected with people on social media, and I just sent them my stuff, and I was like, if there's any chance that you have anything, like, I will write 2 sentences for you.
Hmm.
Um, do it, and don't be afraid. Like, I know a lot of people like suffer from imposter syndrome and stuff like that, but like, I think the worst, you're your worst enemy, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
like, I promise you, whatever you send into them, like, someone has sent something worse. And like, just never read, like, I read the first thing that I had ever sent in to Onyx Path Publishing, like, when I really, really, I wanted to work on Changeling the Lost,
Uh,
and I sent in this piece, and I was so proud of it. I was just like, I'm gonna go look back at like that piece I sent in, and never look back, right? So send in a lot, and because also as a publisher, I really appreciate that when people contact me, because it shows you actually want to work for me.
Mhm.
So send a lot of stuff out and tell people how much you like their stuff. And two, don't look back and feel shamed for what you wrote. You're fine. All of our stuff sucks at the start, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember we had Dennis Detwiller, the creative director for Arc, who makes Delta Green, and he had the same thing in mind. The work from his early days, he didn't even want to touch and talk about. Like, it's definitely the progression is great, and looking back, it can be terrifying at times.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's not that you can't be proud of what you've done,
Hmm.
but like, don't look back with the knowledge that you have now, because that's just a world of pain.
This is so fair. All right, so for the chat, always feel free to ask questions. Just send it out. I'll make sure to bring it onto the show. But on to another topic, which is there's a financial barrier to games that can make it difficult. Yep. To try out new games, for people to just kind of get involved. Um, Game companies are becoming a little bit more cognizant of that. I know, for example, like Avery Alder, the creator of Monster Hearts, has like this special discount that's like, if you're going through financial issues, buy this book at this price, you know, which I think is awesome. And you, on your blog, mentioned several other things that industry leaders are doing to help with that. But why do you think this is such an important issue? And how can game companies help?
I mean, I think it's an important issue because essentially what we're doing is make pretend, right? And like, that's the cheapest thing you can possibly do. We all do it like when we're kids, right?
Hmm.
I also think that like as an industry, we strive to be inclusive. Um, so, no matter your gender, no matter your race, no matter skin tone, anything
Hmm.
like that, your sexuality, we want to be inclusive, or at least I believe and I hope that's where the industry is going.
Yes, definitely.
And I think one thing that we forget is that like our books are very expensive. And so it's actually like a lot of nerdisms, right, are almost an elitist hobby if you want to do them legally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think like no one wants to download your role play game, no one wants to download that PDF for free if they know that they could pay for what they're giving you, or at least that's my belief. Most people,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you need to give them that opportunity, right? Like people need that chance to say like, hey, I don't have the money, I'd love to play your game, what can I do?
Yeah.
So for me, I think that's why it's important. Also, myself growing up, I didn't have the most amount of money. My mom worked 3 jobs, like she put me through school, and like I had a lot of PDFs of role play games that weren't exactly legal. I've now bought said role play games because now I'm making my own money. But like if I could have paid for those games, like I would have done it in a heartbeat because they meant so much to me, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So and I think that we forget that, and like there's also I've been in debates with people where they're like, for example, like D&D book, like a new fifth edition book is like $54 now or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. They never go below 45.
No, so like, and they're like, well, it's only $50, and if you split it between 4 or 5 people, and I'm like, that's $50 is still a lot of money, right?
It
Like that's
is.
still a lot of money, and if you're choosing between that and like, for example, going to school with like maybe a cooler t-shirt that doesn't make you look so lame, like you're not going to choose the D&D book, you're going to download it, and like I don't blame
Yeah.
you. I'm sorry if that's unpopular with my fellow publishers, but like I just really don't blame people.
Yeah, no, I
um,
mean, uh, that the whole idea about splitting the cost of the group, I have never seen that happen.
no,
It's
no,
hard.
I've never seen it happen. Like I started like at conventions when I sell witch books, I give a free PDF with it. And I'm like, yeah, so you can give them to your players. And someone was like, oh, you're telling me I should give these PDFs to my players? I'm like, yes. Like, I'm assuming one person in the group has a book and everyone else shares the PDFs because
Yeah.
it's expensive. And like to think that that doesn't happen is very unrealistic.
Yeah.
And to expect that every player who maybe isn't able to afford it is going to buy your PDF is also ridiculous. Um,
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think I've ever been in a group where there was one person with the hardback and everyone else just had PDFs.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just where we are.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously that's why I forgot your second question because I got on
No,
my
no, it's
soapbox.
cool. No, I love it. I'm actually gonna hop into some chats because people have some amazing things to say. Let's see. So South 2012 says more RPG books should be paperback. Too many RPG supplements are hardcover when there is no need for it. What do you think about that?
I mean, no, I mean I agree. Like out of principle, it makes sense what they're saying. I think that there is within some publishing theories and like what I've talked to publishers about as well
Hmm.
is it's the fact that like D&D has that standard 8 by 11 size, and which is recognizable and commercially successful. So if you go for the hardback full cover book, you feel like you're going to reach more people, and more distributors are going to pick it up because distributors will then think you're like a serious company. So that's the only thing that like I mean, and slowly like we're seeing that change as more industries become kind of like more indie companies give out these paperback books and say like, no, this is a role play game.
Yeah.
But it's changing slowly, right? So like I agree with it on principle, but there is like a commercial reason that people
Yeah.
do it.
I mean, for me, I always a little bit apprehensive because I could compare, I could show everyone my Masquerade book, which is a soft cover, compared to the a D&D book that I've purchased way before then. In my soft cover, ooh, it is taking a beating. But definitely the hardcover, at least for me, I've always kind of like it a little bit better. Uh,
Yeah, my masquerade books held together with duct tape, but like it was the book, it was the one book for our group of 5 people over 10 years. So like
yeah.
I don't think we can use it as an example.
Yeah, I LARPed because I had the BNS by Night Studios Masquerade book that we LARPed with, and I would take it from city to game, and people would like take it, and I'd like give it back, and just passed hands so many times, and yeah, it's struggling.
Yeah, I mean like indeed maybe if they were all paperback though, like at least like if they were all like small black and white paperbacks, but like
Hmm.
not black and white because I love my
Yeah,
art, but
I
like
have to have color in
I have to have colors,
it.
but like, okay, it can be paperback. Like, maybe though, like, right, they're cheaper to buy, they're cheaper to produce, so like they're less dear than if you lose them,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I definitely would prefer an option, right? If you want to go hardback and spend a little bit more money on kind of like the I guess a premium experience in terms of what you can do with the paper involved and the exterior cover, and then the soft cover if you're on a budget and you just need something, you just want to play the game. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Options would be great. All right, so let's hop back over. Yeah, I think they all just pretty much agree in terms of the hardcover, soft cover. Uh, Guys, let me know if there's anything you guys want me to ask because I'm looking through all of the. Oh, there we go. There we go. So, how do you go about creating a new mechanical rule set for a game? Is it better to just go with an established system versus building a better mousetrap?
I mean, if you want to make a lot of money, write something for Dungeons and Dragons. Like, look on Kickstarter right now, and if you want to make some money, you make something cool for Dungeons and Dragons. And like, D20 system works, man. Like, I can't knock it. Like, it's tried, it's tested. Like, we can debate what 20th level looks like and whether or not it's broken or not. But like in general, that dice system works, right?
Yeah, people enjoy it.
People enjoy it. I think that you don't need to recreate the wheel, but I think when you design a game system, um, not all mechanics will work how they are presented in another game. And you can see that, for example, like when people do Apocalypse World hacks, right? Like they don't just
Yeah.
take the basic moves and slap them onto another game. And it's the same thing with like if I was going to use a D20 system for Afterlife, there's no mechanical system in there, for example, for when someone experiences a memory, which we do have an Afterlife. So like I
Hmm.
would have to build that in.
Yeah.
So you're gonna find, at least I believe, like a lot of the base rolling mechanics can kind of all be split into like, oh, that's based off that, based off that. But when you get into more of the nuance of the game, and I think when you get into a good game, where you see those variations are things that people have designed themselves, which only really fit within the one game that they're creating.
Hmm.
Even though the base dice system of whether you roll a handful of d6s or a d20 can pretty much be pasted onto each
Yeah.
other, you know?
Excellent. All right, so let me go back to the second part of the question that we kind of went on a tangent on, which is awesome, and then talk to some people. Thank you, Umachika, for the question. Actually, we got another question from Delinquents on the topic of afterlife itself. It's probably pretty obvious that there is a spiritual aspect of it. Did you conduct research into the different spiritual beliefs of different cultures to influence your decisions?
So originally, Afterlife um, started with a bit of a Judeo Christian slant, because I was thinking of using the seven heavenly virtues and the seven deadly sins
Hmm.
as a way in which people connect with their past memories. But I very quickly realized that having that kind of concept encapsulate what a memory was, right? Like
Hmm.
having to link it to one of those 14 things, which is actually quite a lot, was still very limiting because I
Hmm.
think, like, obviously the complexity of human experience can't be boiled down to these 14 things.
Yeah.
And then once I kind of realized that, I started scrapping um, that thought of having an all encompassing religion or belief that defined the afterlife,
Yeah.
because I wanted it to be weirder, right? I wanted it to be I shouldn't belong here, right? Anyone who came to the Tenebris would just think, "Oh, no, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is nothing I've ever heard of before.
Yeah.
Um, so like research very early on went into a lot of afterlives, and then I was like, okay, what can I do to flip that? So indeed, like there was the moment that came, like, I know all this stuff now. What can I do to like rail against that? So when you go into the book of afterlife, when you look into like, for example, limbos,
Mm-hmm.
which are these like gateways to different afterlives, so you could assume maybe heaven, hell, or whatever. They're all very alien.
Mm-hmm.
They're all um, things you won't expect. And then what we're kind of doing with the stretch goals, for example, is that we do have some authors who kind of want to go into that more traditional afterlife. And like I encourage people who are playing to do that as well. But I think like that's not something you need me to write. That's something that you can look up on Wikipedia, like every good GM, 5 minutes before your session starts. Like,
This is fair. Thank you, Diloquence, for the question.
thank you. Yeah.
Feel free to ask more. And I think I have found the second part of the question, uh, which was we were talking about financial barriers and stuff like that. Though I think we might have covered it in kind of our previous meandering. How can game companies help?
Well, I think like there's people leading that, right? So there's like Avery with her company. There's also like After the War by Jason Pitt. He actually did a really cool thing, which was he did buy a copy, give a copy, which I thought was fantastic, right? So like for people who do have the means, you buy a book and you give a book to someone who doesn't. I think that's fantastic. I think also just people being more realistic about what's happening to their product, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe like when you like Wizards of the Coast, like when you when you sell that like $50 book, maybe just give a free PDF along with it so that all the players can play as well. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, just even if you think about like they want kids to play it, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons is on Stranger Things. Like you are marketing it to like a younger audience. Are you really gonna like steal like 6 5-year-olds pocket money for a year? Like, you know what I mean? Like, or
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
5-year-olds, like 10 12-year-olds, you know what I mean? Like give them the PDF so that their parents don't have to shell out all that money when they could be like buying their kids food or like a field trip somewhere, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I love it when games have the PDF included with the physical copy. It's
Yeah.
otherwise you're doing character creation. It's gonna take like 2 hours, and as everyone moves the book around. Ooh, so we got another question from Umachika. What's your approach to world building? How nuanced and detailed is too much? And they say because I get stuck doing that forever and never writing the story that's supposed to go with it. So what's your approach to world building, and how nuanced and detailed is too much?
Um, my approach to world building is haphazard and disorganized. um, if I'm being completely honest, I think I like to think about what people believe. I myself am an atheist, but like, which makes me overly focused as a game designer on what people's belief systems are and how things are organized. So I kind of get into there, like, what's the belief system? Where does that come from? And how does the cosmology of your world develop from there?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, in terms of detail, I think it really depends on what you're creating. If you're struggling though with creating something that's so overworked or you're getting so into it, my one suggestion that I would give you, which I give all game designers who ask me for advice, is like play your game. And I know that sounds crazy, but like, even if you don't have a dice system, like, take a D20 system, take a basic D6 system or like a handful of D10s and play your game. And
Mm-hmm.
that by living in the world you've created is the only way you're going to see if it's too much. And it's also the only way you're going to see where your holes are, right? Like it's the same thing for Afterlife. When I started playing, I hadn't developed any species that lived in the Tenebris, but they're like, well, what do the inhabitants look like, for example? So I had all these limbos worked out. I had all these weird places people could visit, and I didn't have anyone to populate them with, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any politics going on, and I realized that's important for a game. So like that would be my advice to the person who asked that question. Just stop yourself like where you are now. Like I don't know what you're creating. I would love to know.
Yeah,
um
go ahead
but
and
like
post it.
yeah, post it. Like stop and play a couple games, and then you're going to see where it's overworked, and you're going to see things that people don't even want to touch with a 10-foot pole, and then you just cut them. Kill your darlings as fast and quickly as possible so you don't get too attached to them.
That's fair. I like it. Yeah. They responded, "Oh, I like that advice. It's good advice." um. So in an industry that is ever changing, what changes would you like to see most in the industry, and what would you kind of like to see remain the same?
um I think there's a lot of things like to say for like we need more diversity. um we need more diverse voices. But I think one thing that I'd like to see change in the industry to help promote all the things that we obviously very
Hmm.
much want to get to as a hobby is more open and honest discussion with each other, um, and the ability to question each other's um, the ability to question each other's ideas,
Hmm.
and what we're developing and how we're working without so much hurt, right? um and that we maybe take each other just in the genuineness of our words. Like I love feedback, right? Like so I'm
Hmm.
this person who's like, give me feedback. And then when you give me feedback, like I want to talk about it and I want to be like, okay, why did you think that? Like what do you think would work better? And I would love if that would be kind of embraced
Hmm.
overall, right? So like if someone disses your favorite game, like instead of being like, well, F you, be like, why do you think that? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
because like I genuinely think like we're so interested in these games but we're less interested in each other and what we think, and the games are all about connecting with each other, so that just seems so obtuse to me. And it's a lot of internet culture too, but like I'd really like to see that change.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
that stay the same. Like I love the hobby, and I a lot of people are like, do we really need to hear this game? Like do we need this game? Like, and I am always here for like the 50,000th fantasy game that I see come up. So like I hope people keep doing that. Like I hope that they keep making games about elves and dwarves and orcs and like in medieval fantasy, and like I will play it and I will be there, and like I hope that never stops. I
Yeah.
hope that people don't get to the point where they're like, I have to create something new and unique. I'm like, or you could just create something cool, because there's gonna be someone who's gonna play it, and like no one's reinventing the wheel at this point. So just like do your thing,
Yeah.
enjoy yourself, you
Yeah.
know? Like,
Yeah. Have fun doing it, and you're gonna make someone happy.
yeah, yeah. Like I mean, you're gonna make someone happy, and there's no reason that you shouldn't create just because you don't think you're unique. Because every idea is unique, you
Yeah.
know? Like,
So actually, determine the nerd says, and kind of going back to that the accepting and such, says, or maybe this is the Tremere.
no.
Delinquents says, sadly, TTRPGs is rampant with comfort zones. Players and DMs tend to just stick with only a few systems. Then you have the oddball, like me, with 50 plus rule sets on my desktop. I'm the same way, Delinquents.
You
Same
see,
way.
I'm not gonna show anybody my little library of games. Like, look at all the beautiful things I will never play.
Yeah, it's just pretty much all the PDFs are on top of all the important documents like taxes and like all the but the real important stuff is on top. I gotta do my games.
I'll just have it. I'm like, if I print this character sheet out, like it makes it more real, and I'll play it then, right? So I have like stacks of character sheets as well, which is just shameful.
Yeah, I let's see if I can pull it out without. Uh, this is this is what I got right now when I organized all the games and such, and yeah, oh, it's the only time I've ever organized. Um, All right. I believe, guys, did you guys have any more questions? Because I know it's late for you, and we really do appreciate you you coming out and hanging with us.
I'm good, but this is still early for me. I ran a game from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. and like I was so enthusiastic about it because I really wanted to run the game for these people. And at the end of it, like we got off, like we were live, and I just looked at one of my friends and I'm like, why did I do this? Like, what? And then he was just like, let's go to bed. I'm like, okay.
All right, you heard her. We're good for another 5 6 hours. Let's do
Just
this.
get the dice out, people. Like,
Let's start a game. Also for Uma Chica, I noticed you put your story on there. If you are okay with that, I would at least like to put that in the details of the YouTube, so people can check it out and stuff like that. But of course, with your express permission, you can message me or whatever if you want something like that to happen. So yeah, any more questions? I know for me, I'm really excited about Tuesday.
I'm excited to see how it goes when you run it. I'm probably what time is it going live?
8 p.m.
Oh, okay. I will be watching that on YouTube.
Yeah, 8 p.m. my time.
Cool, I know. That's a YouTube for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's probably one of my favorite things about talking to people in different time zones and everything. It's you start to think about it.
I'm the worst at scheduling meetings. Like I've now been like, okay, double triple check. But now Google has been my savior. So like anytime someone invites me for something, normally I send a calendar invite and then I get an email back like, Liz, it's wrong. It's an hour later. It's an hour earlier. Sorry. Why
Oh
I
yeah.
sent the invite.
Yeah, every time I'm like trying to set up a meeting, it's like, what time zone are you in? What
Yeah.
time zone am I in? What's the UTC thing on that? Uh, yeah.
I ended up scheduling a bunch of stuff with people in North America before before daylight savings here.
Oh
And
man.
then it didn't so then it didn't calendar didn't calculate daylight savings. So then everything in the next month was like 1 hour later. So like all my 1 a.m. meetings became 2 a.m. meetings. And I was just like,
Oh no.
I am brought shame upon someone, just myself, I guess. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, for me, I have sticky notes, which pretty much like are the border of my my screen, and then I just started doing Google Calendars. I believe we have a question. Delinquent says, "Flip the script. Does Elizabeth have a question for Mitchell?" I don't know. My thing's infinitely less interesting than your stuff.
I can like, well, who's yeah. Well, I can ask you a question, Mitchell.
All right.
Like, I mean, what's the most interesting thing that you've learned, like from a game designer? Like, has there anything like recently that struck you and you've been like, oh man,
Oh, I for me talking to game designers, I realize how much of fan people we are of each other. Um, Originally I thought it was a one way street, but every time I message someone over Kickstarter or email, and I'm like, hey, I really want your game on my show, and then they get excited, and I'm like, I didn't think you'd be this excited, and I'm like infinitely excited. I didn't think that would be a thing, and it's really cool to just see like that two-way, like I'm excited that you're interested in my work, and then the other person's super excited about the interest in the other. So it's been really cool seeing that.
you didn't expect game designers to be excited that you wanted to host their game?
No, I thought I would be like, hey, can I host your game? Can I, do you mind like showing it off, or like just being like, hey, and I thought it'd be like a whole like task of being like, I don't know, let me check out your stream, let me see if you guys are any good, etc., etc. But no, it was like everyone has been just like, yes. And
Yeah, like, it's the most flattering thing. So like, yeah, I
yeah,
can totally attest to
yeah,
that, man.
which is weird because as I think one of them said it. Yeah, Umachika, you guys are like distant celebrities to at least me and definitely people in the chat and everything. So it's interesting to see like the same kind of response or enthusiasm.
I had that the first time I went to Origins, like seeing all the people who wrote your game, like the games you love in real life, is just very, yeah. It's like, ooh, celebrity, and then you're like, oh wait, I'm having a beer next to this person. Okay, this is cool. You know what I mean? Like, but it's definitely that step, right? Because like in the role play industry, it's definitely possible to meet your heroes if you want to, you know?
It is, yeah, and that thanks to this, I get to meet my heroes like every week, which is awesome, and you definitely rank among the heroes.
Oh, thank you.
um, yeah, yeah. So the chat definitely agrees with that. They're gushing. So yeah, I think that is it. Because I know you don't want to keep you too long, and we do have another show coming up at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is in 40 minutes. So some things I need to plug, because I've had my co-writer on this Symbaroum adventure that we co-wrote together, in that they're doing the Symbaroum contest. Um, and I have completely forgot to plug it every time I am doing this. But yes, please check it out. It is South 2012. If you could just put down the link, that is where you can vote. We did an awesome story called Rite of Passage, which definitely gives you a unique perspective for Symbaroum, the game. If you ever played that, it's a really cool game by Free Leagues. They do a lot of great work over there. He's working on that now, so you'll see that. So there's my plug for that. On the details section, if you're watching on YouTube, you will see Umachika's story and links, and also send that over to you, Elizabeth, just if you want to check it out. But please
I'm
check it
excited.
out. It looks awesome from what I've seen. It's gonna be amazing, and I definitely encourage them to play it and to make it a game if they want. So yeah, the on the chat, the link for that, as well as for the Rite of Passage, vote please. Um, Other than that, at 8 p.m., 45 minutes from now, we are just having a fireside Friday night chat about the tabletop industry as a whole, as well as kind of the new fresh things that are coming out, as well as inclusivity. We're just gonna go all over the place. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be really cool. I'm excited. And I just thought of my final question for you, Elizabeth, which has kind of been on my head for, I think, the whole thing, and just kind of bounce out every now and then. One of the things I really appreciate about your game is having the X card blurb in there. I just started using it thanks to actually South 2012 a couple months ago. Why do you think that is so important for the role playing community as a whole?
I think like at least when you're playing games where with people you're not like intimately familiar with, like you're
Mhm.
not playing with a group of your best friends, right? There's certain content that people are not comfortable with, even after you give like a talk of like, this is expectations, right?
Mhm.
Because like if you're playing an extremely bloody game or something like that, like maybe people will already leave the table. So it's important to have those safety tools there. And like a lot of people say like, oh, well, this does something like break immersion, right? Like, no. It's specifically there to not break immersion. So you don't have someone sitting there who is completely uncomfortable, who is not talking the entire game, who just gets up and leaves. So kind of to keep the game fun for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely think in when we're playing these fantasy games and when you're playing in a game where you get to travel different worlds and have magical powers, it's okay to have a safety tool on the table that protects people from themes that they don't want to explore, because you know what? That's also realistic.
Yeah, and tabletop is a great way to kind of explore different perspective and themes that you might not have otherwise been given a chance to. And we definitely want to kind of cultivate a nice, safe place for people to explore these avenues. So yeah, as a GM, I really love seeing that. And yeah.
And I mean, it's also so easy. Like just as a GM, like it is like the ultimate lazy tool. You put it on the table, you explain it to everyone, and it's just like it's the best thing when someone uses it because it's not a huge discussion. It's like cool, like we're gonna
Yeah.
rewind and we're gonna keep playing.
Hmm.
It's just a great tool, and it keeps everyone safe and everyone happy.
Yeah, we love it. We love it. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please check Elizabeth Chaipraditkul.
Coon.
Oh man. I just needed that coaching from her. I should have recorded that and just played it back. um, please check her out on the Kickstarter. I will send the details of the Kickstarter right as soon as this stream ends, and it'll also be right down below. Please support. We love Angry Hamster Publishing. We want them to be the best and rule the tabletop RPG industry. So let's make that happen. And once again, Elizabeth, thank you very much for a wonderful time, and I hope you have the best of nights.
Thank you so much for having me on. I had a blast. And also thank you to everyone who was commenting and talking. That's so cool. That's like
Yes,
this interaction is very cool.
I know it was awesome. I loved it. And then next time it'll be the Tremere verse. Is me
The formal
saying,
debate.
yeah, things will get real. All right, goodbye, everyone.